Talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Joshua Lane, member of the board of directors of Dr. Ann Wigmore's Hippocrates Health Institute, Josh Lane was part of the Dr. Ann Wigmore team that brought wheatgrass, sprouts, and raw foods to a worldwide audience. And now the host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, Joshua Lane.
We're back. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. My guest is Dr. John Ivey, professor of kinesiology and health sciences, health education at the University of Texas at Austin. Dr. Ivey has been very influential in teaching us how to use supplements and foods to improve athletic performance. And it's a great pleasure to have Dr. John Ivey with us today on Here's to Your Health. Dr. Ivey, welcome.
Thank you very much, Josh.
Really very happy to have you here. Now, for my guests, please tell us what kinesiology is first.
All right. Well, kines means movement, and ology is study. So it's literally it's the study of movement. But in the context in which we use it, it's the study of how movement affects the physiology and biomechanics or physics of the body. So when you're exercising, we'll look at what are the physiological changes that occur with exercise, what are the metabolic changes that occur with exercise. And then from a chronic standpoint, if we train daily, how does this affect the body as far as training adaptation? Certain exercises will make you stronger, certain exercises will improve endurance. And so we can look at it from a athletic standpoint of improving performance, or we can do it from a health benefit as well, controlling body weight, reducing risk factors for cardiovascular disease or type 2 diabetes. So it really covers a large spectrum of how the body functions under physical activity and exercise. And it doesn't have to necessarily be exercise per se, but daily physical activity as well.
And is kinesiology a new study? I mean, how long has that been a discipline?
It's been a discipline for quite a while. Actually, the first kinesiology program, or it was actually called exercise physiology then, was about in 1880, and it was actually started at Harvard.
Oh, I did not know.
Yeah.
And also, by way of background, where do you have your undergraduate and graduate degrees?
Yeah, my undergraduate degree is from Old Dominion University in Virginia. I had a BS from there, and then I did my master's and PhD at the University of Maryland. And then following that, I had an NIH postdoctoral fellowship, and I studied and did research at Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis.
So, and you always worked with kinesiology? That was your focus?
Yeah, well, the effects of exercise on the body, yes. And initially, most of my work was actually looking at prevention of disease or rehabilitation from disease. I did a lot of my research was related to preventing type 2 diabetes or rehabilitation from type 2 diabetes. What caused type 2 diabetes? And also looked at risk factors of heart disease, how you reduce those. And I got interested in the sports nutrition aspect because of some of the things I was seeing, particularly related to type 2 diabetes. When one exercises, what happens to the muscles? They become more insulin sensitive. How does that affect carbohydrate storage in the muscle? What effect does that have on athletic performance? And so it kind of took me into the realm of sports nutrition and performance.
Now, sports nutrition is very important, but you also mentioned, just in passing, working with movement, nutrition, and diabetes. Do you feel there's a direct correlation, and can you affect a positive outcome with a patient who might be diabetic by using nutrition and exercise? Oh,
yeah, sure. And there's some really good studies. In fact, I was involved with a couple when I was at Washington University School of Medicine, where we took individuals that were classified type 2 diabetics, and actually through exercise and proper nutrition, we were able to clear them of the disease. They actually were classified as non-diabetic by the time they finished the program.
Okay, now that's actually pretty important. And can I ask you, what was the food protocol and what was the exercise protocol? Just in passing, can you mention it to my
Yeah, the
viewers?
exercise protocol we were using were the subjects were exercising 3 to 4 times a week, and then on the 9 days that they were exercising, they had to get in a certain amount of walking, and we controlled their food intake, calories per day. We made sure that they were reduced to within a level that was consonant with weight loss. So one of the major factors with type 2 diabetes is gaining too much weight, particularly fat. And so when you reduce that fat content, this improves the body's sensitivity to insulin, and so insulin levels drop, blood glucose levels drop, and the body is better able to control their blood glucose levels, and so less insulin is required to do that. The type of diet we had was, pretty standard. It was mainly controlling calories at the time.
Just less of everything they were eating, was that it?
Yeah, well, we did cut down on some of the fatty foods and some of the simple carbohydrates, and we suggested, we made recommendations. We had a nutritionist working with us, and the nutritionist made recommendations on the types of food to eat so that it was complex carbohydrates that weren't saturated fats and things of that nature. Also, controlling when to eat is very important.
Yes.
And so and that took me actually into the realm of nutrient timing, which I've applied to athletics. But one of the things we know is that if individuals skip breakfast and eat the majority of their calories from mid-afternoon to night, that they have a 80% greater chance of being obese than those that eat a good breakfast. It's amazing. So one of the things that we wanted these individuals to do was to eat a good hearty breakfast in the morning. And what that does, and there's some really nice research on it within the last few years as to what happens, but if you have a good breakfast, it tends to reduce appetite over the course of the day, so that, and actually you see this, individuals later in the day have less food craving, they have less hormonal changes that would stimulate appetite, and they tend to maintain a more normal body fat content.
That's all very important. You mentioned the word, in passing, complex carbohydrate vis-a-vis simple carbohydrate. Please give me a definition of complex carbohydrate.
Yeah, complex carbohydrates are going to be those that are mainly found in your vegetables, and it could be, complex starches.
Like a sweet potato?
Yeah, like sweet potato, things of that nature, or even in your greens, so even spinach has carbohydrate, and broccoli, those type of foods are much better. The simple carbohydrates are going to be, your simple sugars, so your sucrose and fructose and so forth. And
for example, soda.
Yeah,
right.
Soda is loaded with it, and people should actually stay away from large amounts of soda.
And so you found that, so you mentioned the subjects ate more carefully at a breakfast, and that the breakfast stabilized their blood sugar, and so they didn't crave sugars later in the day or something? Was that it?
It does seem to do that. The research that's been shown is that if you have a good breakfast, the hormonal changes that occur over the day are such that there's less drive to eat later on. There's less craving for food, particularly at night. And one of the things that we know is that appetite goes up the most at night. And one of the other things that we did was for supper, we had individuals eat foods that we knew were very satiating. So,
such as?
Yeah, a high amount of protein. Protein is very satiating. This is when you
want. Give me an example.
Yeah, well, steak. Steak would be very good.
Eggs.
Eggs eggs, fish. Chicken, those type of things. Then also, this is when we also suggested that they eat a higher amount of fat during this time. Now, good fat, but about 35% of the meal was actually fat, because fat is very satiating. And what this does is prevent individuals from snacking closer to bedtime. When you take in these calories, it is converted into fat very readily during the course of the night.
And why do most of us tend to overeat at night, not at 7 in the morning when you wake up, but at night. Why do we do that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, but people that get up in the morning, they're in a rush, and they don't feel like they have time for breakfast. They run out of the house. A lot of times they don't eat a very good lunch as well, so they're craving food at night. So they'll eat supper, and then after supper, that's not very satiating, and so they tend to, eat late at night, snacking. In fact, years ago, I had a lawyer call me from San Antonio. Of course, I live in Austin, not too far away, but he wanted me to analyze a dietary supplement that was being sold in San Antonio. And I said, sure, all right, I'll look at it. And it was 2 pills. The individuals were to take these 2 pills, and he asked me, could these actually reduce, appetite and cause weight loss and increase fat burning? And I analyzed the supplements, and I said, well, it has some ingredients in here that have been shown to increase fat burning, to, suppress appetite. But I said, there's really not enough of the components in it to even do this to a rat, much less human. He said, well, we don't understand this. We didn't think it would work, but people are swearing by it. And I said, well, tell me more about this. And he said, well, the program is that you take 2 of these capsules after supper, and then you can't eat anything until the morning.
Okay, good.
And I said, well, if they follow that, that's probably going to help tremendously, because of the, all the junk that people tend to eat when snacking late at night. Yeah.
Well, and what did you advise that fellow? Increase the amount of chromium? What was it? What did you tell him to do?
Well, I just told him, I said, look, if it's working for these people, let them do it.
Right.
If they're, if it's stopping them from snacking at night, that's fine.
Now, as a young man, you played baseball, didn't you?
That's correct.
You played college ball.
That's right.
Yeah. And so that was what, in 60s, 70s?
That's right. Yeah, from 65 to 69.
And in those days, have you always been fitness inclined? You've always been a careful guy?
Well, I think just, playing sports throughout my life, even in high school, I played 4 sports. And then in college, I played baseball. But when I wasn't playing baseball, I was, playing intramurals and things. So I was always physically active, but I wasn't necessarily working out. In fact, back then, coaches didn't even want us to lift weights or work out that way. Right?
And they said what? They said make you muscle bound, right?
Yeah, make you muscle bound, stiffen you up, you lose your flexibility, etc.
And of course, they were wrong. They were wrong there. They were wrong, right?
Definitely wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, I had Franco on, Franco Colombo and Samir, and they both said, oh yeah, in those days people just made fun of the idea of lifting weights as being not only having no merit, but maybe being slightly, undesirable. And it was really kind of amusing the way you live long enough, you see ideas change.
Right.
And so as a young man, did you do anything nutritionally or exercise-wise to boost your career as a ball player?
No. And in fact, nutrition wasn't even on the radar,
right.
And by nutrition, I look back now and I think, what a waste, because there's no way that you can train and maximally adapt, bring about a maximal training adaptation without proper nutrition. So proper nutrition being not only what we eat, but when we eat it.
Right.
And, I wish I knew, had known then what I know now, because I think I could have been a much better athlete. I know I would have been a much better athlete, even from, the standpoints of lifting, increasing strength. And with that, you can increase flexibility, and, the hydration aspects. Even when I played high school football in Virginia, where it's quite humid and we had 2-a-days, we were not allowed.
You had what a days?
2-a-day practices in the summer, right. Getting ready for the season. We would be out on the field dying of thirst, and we couldn't have any water. Our coach did not allow water on the field. We couldn't get it till we got back in. Yeah, right.
Because they really thought it was bad?
They wanted you to get tough and, get used to not having water. Why, I'm not sure, but that's what we did. There was no water on the field. And in fact, to get into the locker room, we had a large milk canister. You remember the old milk canisters that?
I don't think so.
Well, yeah, they were about 2.5 feet high, and I don't know how many gallons they held, maybe 2.5 gallons or something like that. But when we came off the field, we had to wring out our jerseys and our shorties under our pads into this milk can. And if we didn't bring enough sweat up over that milk can, we went back out on the field till we sweated. Yeah, my coach was old school. He was a old Washington Redskin linebacker, and he thought this was would toughen us up.
But in retrospect, it was just incorrect science. It did not toughen the men. If anything, it really diminished their performance.
No, I think it did, and in fact, I know it did. We should have been hydrated. We should have been better schooled in what to eat and when to eat, and we should have given time on the field to stay hydrated. Post coming off the field, we should have been given drinks to get hydrated as well.
Okay,
but science wasn't there at the time.
It was not there. So tell my listeners, those of you just tuning in to Here's to Your Health today, we're speaking with Dr. John Ivy from the University of Texas at Austin. What is the suggestion that you have, because you really are one of the most influential fellows in this subject, quite frankly, how much water, okay, let's say you are managing or coaching a team now of either baseball players or football players, what's the correct amount of water before the young men go on the field and while they're playing, etc.?
Yeah, well, going on the field each day, you want to be hydrated, and you can't get hydrated if you dehydrated during your workout. You can't get hydrated right away. It takes about, depending on the amount of dehydration, but it takes a good 3 to 4 hours to rehydrate, because even if you consume the fluid that you've lost, you're going to lose a lot of that by urination and continued sweating and so forth. So you don't retain all the fluid that you're consuming. So it takes a while to build that back up. One of the things that you can do is weigh yourself before you go on the field and after you get off the field, and you can figure out about how much. The weight loss there is mainly water loss. And so when you weigh yourself at night, if you've reestablished your weight, you're probably rehydrated. You can also look at urine color. If urine color is very yellow, you're probably dehydrated still. It needs to be a lighter color. So that after the practice, you want to consume fluids, and also adding a little protein to whatever you're drinking. So a lot of the sports drinks have carbohydrate in it and electrolytes, and you definitely need the electrolytes as well. You need the sodium, potassium, and so forth. So sports drinks are great for that. But adding a little protein to it helps, because that helps you retain the fluid. So the addition of a little protein in a sports drink helps you actually rehydrate faster than if you don't have it. But when you're on the field, you should be drinking, particularly if you're in a situation like football where you're in heavy gear, it's hot and humid, and you're doing tour days. You definitely want to be drinking about every 20 minutes. And individuals should be consuming anywhere from about 250 to 300 milliliters of fluid during that period of time. And they should have water breaks periodically, every 20 to 30 minutes.
And how much in ounces is that?
That's going to be, it's going to be about 8 to 10 ounces of fluid.
Say every 20 minutes?
Yes, about every 30 minutes, yeah.
And originally they didn't want you to drink water. They thought it was, it made you tougher. But now most people realize, oh no, the ball players need to drink water.
Oh yeah, sure. And with the over the past few years, not recently, but 3 or 4 years ago, there were a number of deaths due to dehydration.
Yes, young ball players, high school ball players.
High school ball players, but also some pros as well. And so people have become very, very conscious of maintaining hydration during the football practices. And so I think most individuals have water breaks. They're making sure that the players are staying hydrated. And also the training of the coaches from that standpoint has improved dramatically as well.
Now, you mentioned the idea of the electrolyte water drink with carbohydrate. When did that first appear on the scene?
carbohydrate electrolyte drinks started actually with the Gatorade back at University of Florida. Bob Cade, a physiologist there, was analyzing the sweat of the players and trying to help the football team, and he figured out basically that how much water they were losing, what the electrolyte content was that was being lost, and he developed this sports drink and added some carbohydrate to it to provide energy. And of course, Gatorade is what it is today.
Right.
But it started at University of Florida back probably, I'm guessing the late 70s.
Late 70s.
I think.
And your addition to the scientific literature was you developed a formulation you feel is correct, a protein-carbohydrate ratio?
That's right. Yeah, I'd been doing work actually in the area of diabetes, and we were looking at signaling pathways in the muscle and what turns them on and off, and how it controls muscle glucose uptake. And one of the things I noted was that when we added protein to a carbohydrate supplement, that we got a greater insulin response than we would normally get with just the carbohydrate, and also that this affected certain signaling proteins in the muscle that stimulated a greater rate of carbohydrate uptake. And so in doing that, we were actually, initially I was looking at ways of stimulating the replenishment of the carbohydrate stores in the muscle post-exercise. And we found that if we added protein to the carbohydrate supplement, we got a greater rate of glycogen storage or carbohydrate storage in the muscle. It was much faster. And
excuse me, Dr. Ivy, and why do I want that? What's the benefit to me?
Yeah, muscle or the carbohydrate stored in the muscle is the primary fuel used during exercise. And if you run out of the muscle glycogen or the carbohydrate stores, you can't maintain high exercise intensity. You have to have that fuel source. So that's depleted during heavy exercise, and so you want to replenish that regularly. And particularly if you're doing exercises or workouts twice a day, you have to find a way to replenish it very rapidly. And we found that you could do that if you added protein to the supplement. So then we looked at, well, what happens if you provide protein during exercise?
Yes.
And what we found was we could actually reduce the amount of carbohydrate in the sports drink and add protein to it and still maintain the efficacy of the drink as far as performance. And then actually we've shown that it's even better than just carbohydrate alone.
And what type of protein do you enjoy using, or you feel is most beneficial for the athlete or the working man or woman?
Yeah, right now whey protein and whey hydrolysates tend to be the best, or have been, and we've done research on this looking at different types of protein. But recently there's some good research coming out that some combinations of proteins might actually be better. So a combination of whey, soy, and casein has been used, and that seems to be very beneficial. So and this helps. Whey protein's gotten very expensive, so if you can find some combinations that reduces the cost of the protein, you can reduce the cost of the drink for the consumer. And so that I think that's the way that we're going to go is looking at some combinations and seeing if they're as effective as using the whey itself.
And one of the items I noticed that you have been working with is not simply the nutrients themselves, the importance of the nutrients and hydration, but the timing as to when an athlete finishes the program and then consumes the nutrients. And I found that to be very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, timing is critical. So the idea of nutrient timing is broken up into three categories. One is what we call the energy phase, which is from about 4 hours prior to exercise through exercise. And so what we want to consume then and when we want to consume it. And that depends on the type of exercise. And then the anabolic phase, which we is immediately post-exercise or within the first 45 minutes post-exercise. And then we have what's called the adaptation phase or growth phase, which is from the end of the anabolic phase for about 6 hours after. So what you do during that time frame becomes very important as to controlling performance, but also training adaptation. For example, we can take when we exercise very hard, let's say we're doing resistance exercise training, we want to increase muscle mass and strength. Well, it's been shown that when you work out really hard, you're in a catabolic state, which means that everything's breaking down. So you're breaking down glycogen in the muscle for fuel. Your creatine phosphate levels are dropping. You've got a rise in the catabolic hormones, cortisol and catecholamines. And protein, you actually have protein breakdown during that period of time. And the amino acids are being utilized to generate glucose and so forth. So post-exercise, just because you stop exercising doesn't mean the catabolic state goes away. It doesn't until you do something about it. So cortisol levels will be elevated, insulin levels will be low, protein breakdown actually exceeds protein synthesis, so you're actually losing protein during that period of time. You're not replenishing your glycogen stores, you're not rehydrating. So what you want to do post-exercise is immediately take in a nutrient supplement. And the body is actually, at this point in time, very sensitive to nutrient intervention. That's one of the things exercise does. It improves the body's response to nutrients. So if I give a carbohydrate protein supplement at that time, I get a rapid rise in insulin. I get a drop in cortisol and catecholamine levels. I block protein breakdown. I turn on protein synthesis. I start developing I get protein accretion or muscle mass increases. I increase my glycogen storage. And the important thing here is that we only have a certain window in which we can rapidly bring that about. And that's within about right after exercise to about 45 minutes after exercise. So if I delay that supplement, let's say, and I give it 2 hours later, I won't get half the response I'll get if I give it immediately post-exercise. So I can get a very rapid rate of protein synthesis occurring, glycogen storage occurring, and if I supplement about every 2 hours, I can keep that process going. So when we talk about training adaptation, we're actually talking about protein synthesis. And so, if I'm increasing muscle mass, what I get is that's an increase in protein synthesis of the myosin and actin in the muscles and connective tissue and so forth. If I'm doing aerobic work, the adaptation is increased muscle endurance. That's mainly mitochondrial biogenesis occurring, so increase the number of mitochondria in the muscle. It's protein synthesis. And even if I'm increasing my maximal oxygen consumption with exercise, aerobic exercise, that's brought about by an increase in red blood cell mass, which is protein synthesis, an increase in blood protein level, which increases plasma volume expansion or causes plasma volume expansion, which is part of increasing VO2 max. And even if I'm doing skills training, trying to develop skills.
What's the skill training?
Yeah, like if I'm shooting foul shots, or if I'm, slap shot in hockey or something like this, I'm setting up neuromotor patterning to improve that. Golf. Well, that's the development of neurons. That's protein synthesis. So all training adaptation is related to protein synthesis. So if I can speed that up with supplementing post-exercise, I speed up the training adaptation. I increase muscle mass faster. I increase mitochondrial biogenesis faster. I increase neuron production faster.
May I ask you, what nutrients did you use that you saw worked better within 45 minutes rather than 2 hours?
Yeah, well, the nutrients that you want is a combination of carbohydrate and protein. And so it depends on the type of exercise is what the ratio of carbohydrate to protein is. But if you're endurance athlete, you probably want to be more closer to the 4-to-1 ratio of carbohydrate to protein.
Endurance athlete meaning a long-term event like a marathon runner.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, marathon runners would be a good example. triathletes, those type of individuals. So 4-to-1, because the higher amount of carbohydrate helps you replenish the glycogen stores better than, say, a 2-to-1 ratio. As you move more towards resistance exercise training, you want to be more down around the ratio of about 2-to-1.
And what's resistance exercise?
Yeah, our weightlifting type training, any type of strength training type work.
And what's the ratio there?
More in the range of 2-to-1, two parts carbohydrate to 1 part protein, but you can go 2.5 to 1 is usually what we use.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's all actually pretty remarkable. For those of you just tuning in, we've been chatting with Dr. John Ivey, University of Texas at Austin, teaches at kinesiology, and we're going to take and Dr. Ivey will be back with us for another segment. We're going to take a very short break, and we'll be right back after these important messages.
Hi, this is Dr. Levi, your fitness doctor, making a personal house call, inviting you to join me Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific for my all-new show, The Dr. Levi Show. Join us as we discuss fitness, health, and well-being, including emotional and spiritual health. So don't forget to tune in to The Dr. Levi Show every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, exclusively on latalklive.com and the Talk Live Broadcast Network. You can also catch us on iTunes, Radio R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv, or catch us on the Live 365 network, and now on Radio Flag and Stitcher Radio. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Elena, inviting you to join me every Wednesday at noon for Elena's Beauty Talk and more, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Joshua Lane, member of the board of directors of Dr. Ann Wigmore's Hippocrates Health Institute, Josh Lane was part of the Dr. Ann Wigmore team that brought wheatgrass, sprouts, and raw foods to a worldwide audience. And now the host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, Joshua Lane.
We're back. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. My guest is Dr. John Ivey, professor of kinesiology and health education at the University of Texas at Austin. And Dr. John Ivey has been very influential in a lot of the products you buy and the way you think about health as an athlete. You might thank Dr. John Ivey. Dr. John Ivey, welcome back to this segment.
Thank you, Josh.
And this is one of your books. You have several books published, do you not?
That's correct. Yes.
What are your titles?
Yeah, Nutrient Timing was my first, and then The Performance Zone, and now Hardwired for Fitness is the most recent one.
And the whole idea of nutrient timing, that must have seemed pretty progressive in its day. People must have thought, wow, where did this come from?
Yeah, that was written back in 2003, and I'd really like to do the second edition, which I haven't gotten around to. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty breakthrough type of process for the athlete. One of the things that I wanted to do was to write a book that helped athletes improve their training adaptation without using illegal substances, banned
Right.
substances, all. And I wanted to show that you could have great training adaptation if you used the right nutrition and the right timing of the
Right.
nutrition. And that was one of the purposes for writing the book.
Which is a subject, the whole idea that nutrition and exercise can really improve an athletic performance, is something that I think most athletes would say, oh, yes, we of course. Tell me something I don't know. But years ago, people just were very dismissive, and now people just kind of take it for granted. But the whole idea of nutrient timing must have seemed, when the book came out, catching everyone by surprise.
Yeah, I think, and I'm still getting emails today that people that have just discovered it and write and tell me how much it's changed their training and rate of training adaptation. And so, we've learned a lot since 2003, and I would like to, do a second edition, but I just haven't had time. But, the basics are still in the book, and, programs are there as to how you can set them up.
Again, that was called nutrient timing.
That's correct.
Nutrient timing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, we were talking right before the segment ended about supplementing post-exercise, and just a couple of examples. After nutrient timing was written, there were some scientists that wanted to, just see if the theories were correct, and
That seems fair.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I wanted it to happen, but there was an individual in Australia named Krebs who did a really nice study. He took and he had a carbohydrate protein supplement that he gave individuals that were doing strength training. He had two groups. One group, both groups did strength training for 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
One group got the carbohydrate protein supplement immediately before and immediately after the workout, and the other group got the supplement in the morning before breakfast and then at night. They did the same workouts. The only difference was in their calorie consumption during the day was basically the same. The only difference was when they got the supplements. And the individuals that got the supplement around the workout had twice the increase in muscle mass in 10 weeks
Wow.
as the other group, and a 30% greater increase in strength.
Okay, so that's actually very important. So you're saying immediately, in other words, like 20 minutes before and 20 minutes after, roughly, is that what we're talking about?
That's right. Yeah.
As long as within the time frame of 45 minutes before or after.
Right. Yeah. So, it doesn't have to be right after. In fact, there's another study by another Australian named Bird who did a study in which he gave a combination of carbohydrate and essential amino acids, 6 grams of essential amino acids, which is really why you're getting the protein. And he gave it between sets during the resistance exercise training, and saw that the tremendous improvements over giving nothing. But he did something interesting. He also had 2 other treatments. One was just the carbohydrate, and one was just the essential amino acids. And the improvements in lean body mass and strength were twice as great when he used the combination.
Uh-huh.
So, and that's really important. A lot of strength athletes, think it's protein. But the addition of carbohydrate is extremely important because it helps activate protein synthesis to a greater degree than just the protein alone. And it has to do with the way signaling pathways are set up in the muscle to turn on protein synthesis. And also the carbohydrate, protein doesn't stop protein breakdown. It'll stimulate protein synthesis, but carbohydrate, because it raises insulin levels, will block protein breakdown.
Uh-huh.
And so when you're looking at protein accretion, the amount of protein that's actually developed, it's the difference between synthesis and degradation. So if you can lower degradation while you're increasing synthesis, you get a better protein accretion. And that's why the carbohydrate's so important.
And when did that concept enjoy great credibility? When was that developed as an idea?
Well, that was actually developed when I did nutrient timing. I mean, I put that stuff together, but since that
No kidding,
time...
you're responsible for that?
Yes.
That actually, excuse me, losing the voice there. That actually that's an important concept. I mean,
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's a very important concept.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
you scientifically validated that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Right.
What's the name of that book again?
Nutrient timing.
Yeah, and that's available where?
On Amazon.com now. Yeah.
Nutrient Timing. Are you selling many copies of Nutrient Timing?
We've sold a lot of copies of Nutrient Timing over the years. Yes. Yeah, I don't know how many now, but there's hundreds of thousands actually.
Because that really, I mean, it's nice when you can add to people's understanding. And That just seems like a great thing to add. And now probably everyone takes it for granted.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, in
Uh-huh.
fact, a lot of people, take credit for it now.
Oh, really? Oh, they do really? Huh?
Yeah.
Well.
But that's okay.
And where can we contact? Are you still teaching at University of Texas?
I am.
So you're at
Well,
University.
I'm a professor emeritus. I still have my research lab there, and I'm still working with graduate students. But I'm not actually teaching classes anymore.
So you're retired from that. You're doing really research.
I'm doing research and working with graduate students, but I just do it to help the graduate students. I'm doing it for free, basically, and I enjoy the research, and I go in and they let me keep my research lab there, and so I enjoy doing it.
And how can we contact you, Dr. Ivy?
You can email me. It's John Ivy, John Ivy at utexas.edu, and so that would probably be the best way to contact me is just email me.
That's great. Well, Dr. John Ivy, it's been a great pleasure having you as a guest today on Here's to Your Health. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
It was fun. You've been listening to Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after these important messages.
Hi, this is Susan Levin, owner and founder of Speaker Services, inviting you to join me and co-host Jean Noel Bassiar on Monday evenings, 5 p.m. Pacific, for our new show, Talk Up Your Business, Speak Your Way to More Profits. We'll be talking to you about how to use your expertise to grow your business or service through speaking. Our expert speakers and author guests will share their stories and success secrets with you. Don't forget to tune in to Talk Up Your Business Mondays at 5 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Starlet Quarles, and I'm inviting you to join us every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. for a new show right here on LA Talk Live, The Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People. Join us as we discuss the topics that are relevant to today's generational leaders. So don't forget to tune in to The Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People, every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. right here on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Barbara Perkins, inviting you to join us every Sunday afternoon at 2:40 for Sisters at the Well Radio, a conversation with women about women. Join us as we share stories about current events, jazz events, business opportunities, health and wellness, entertainment, and so much more. So don't forget to tune in Sundays at 2:40, exclusively on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Joshua Lane, member of the board of directors of Dr. Ann Wigmore's Hippocrates Health Institute, Josh Lane was part of the Dr. Ann Wigmore team that brought wheatgrass, sprouts, and raw foods to a worldwide audience. And now the host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, Joshua Lane.
We're back. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Joshua Lane. Many of us now use probiotics, and we realize that we feel better when we take acidophilus or probiotic products. And my next guest is Mark Rawlinson, who is with the Kendi Corporation that brings over a acidophilus product from Bulgaria, which has a long history of use. Mark Rawlinson, welcome to Here's to Your Health.
Good afternoon, Josh, to you and your listeners.
Yeah, happy to have you here. So probiotics is very popular, and there's a lot of discussion about it. What do I get when I take probiotics?
Well, one of the dangers of talking about the benefits of probiotics is that it can end up sounding a little bit like snake oil.
Because it does everything, which it does.
It can affect everything. So
that's fair.
Primarily, people are looking for improvements in their immune system, their ability to fight off, the infection from bacteria and viral and so on, digestion, regulating their waste production. It can also pan over into various allergies, lactose intolerance, for example, more serious conditions, colitis, candida. But it's a fairly accepted medical fact that around 70 to 75% of all the illnesses and infections that we are likely to suffer from in our lives will originate in the gastrointestinal system. Mm-hmm. So it's a very important part of the whole of the function of the body, how we ingest nutrients from food and supplements that we take. Even bone mass, calcium ingestion, and so many different things. So clearly I'm biased, but I would suggest that in the general supplement categories, probiotics should be the number one on anyone's list for finding a good probiotic that works for them. It's the supplement that I think has the most potential for very specific conditions and just general good health.
I think you're in good company now. I think most people would agree with you that the probiotic is very important. Now, you mentioned many things that probiotics do, and you also mentioned that, 70% of the immune system is in the GI tract?
No, about 70% of illnesses or infections. If you become ill or acquire an infection over the course of your life, it will tend to originate in your gastrointestinal system, probably. And there can be many reasons, but one of the common ones is that for some reason your immune system may not be functioning to its full capacity, and that can be for many reasons, right. Because you've had other illnesses, stress, antibiotics, sometimes age, poor diet. There can be many reasons, but I mean you can look at, for example, we all know you get on an aeroplane, there's maybe 200 people all breathing the same atmosphere for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours.
Right.
When they walk off the plane, only some of them have picked up an infection. Most of the others haven't. Well, why? Well, it's probably because their immune system is not functioning as it should be.
Right. That also seems accurate. Now, if I take a probiotic, why does it help me improve digestion?
The way the body breaks down food, it's partly a function of what's called the microflora. The microflora is the ecology of the bacteria, because there are many different types of bacteria in your GI system, and they are there in vast quantities. To throw a statistic at you, if you took all of the bacteria from a typical human, that would amount to about 7 pounds of bacteria.
Yes. Now that idea that we actually carry around 7 pounds of bacteria, that's actually pretty new, isn't it?
That understanding of the bacteria is fairly new, yes. And it's also true that there are more bacteria in your body than living cells in the rest of your body. So that makes up a very large proportion of the number of living cells. So what in effect you're carrying around with you is this microecology of bacteria which are working on your behalf to, for example, ingest food. It's well established that, for example, inulin, which is a part of our product, helps the body. Inulin, yes, not insulin, just to make sure there's no confusion.
Inulin. What's inulin?
It's a natural fiber which is typically found in grains and green plants, chicory, burdock, dandelion, and so on. And for obvious reasons, our average intake of inulin is somewhat less than it was 100 years ago, for example. And it has many benefits, but one of the benefits is that the presence of inulin will help the body ingest somewhere in the region of up to 18% more calcium from what you put into your body than if it's absent. So, for example, many people will take a calcium supplement without necessarily understanding that just because you're putting calcium into your body does not necessarily mean that it's ingesting it and converting it into bone mass, for example. So inulin will help that, and the presence of a healthy microflora will help to break down food, as well as helping to keep out, to stop the bacteria. You're going to breathe harmful pathogens in. The question is, will they actually colonize and get a hold in your system and develop into an infection? And the bacteria are what prevent them from doing that.
And what foods, you mentioned burdock and chicory, what other food has a lot of inulin?
It's mainly a grain product, so
Grain,
eating any product
so
with
brown rice,
wheat and rice, wheat, any product like that comes from a grain source.
And the idea of the use of probiotics, the things that most of us know now in 2013, was any of this really known in 1999?
There's a lot of research on probiotics that's been going on for a long time, and partly because it still sits there as in the supplement category rather than the drug category. So it still doesn't need to meet the requirements that a drug would have to do in terms of its testing.
Right.
But most of the research that's been done has been pretty clear that probiotics do have a benefit. I mean, in fact, it's indisputable that the probiotic bacteria in your body are essential to life and the functioning of the body. And really the birth of probiotics is very much linked to what's unique about our product.
The Kendi product.
The Kendi product. And it sounds like a bit of a history lesson, but if you go back to the beginning of the 20th century, around about 1903, 1904, there was, in scientific circles, quite a famous phenomena that the rural population of Bulgaria, which were primarily farmers, had abnormally good health and long life, and naturally people wanted to know why. And a Russian biologist called Dr. Ilya Mechnikov, who at the time was the director of the Pasteur Institute in Paris, went to Bulgaria to investigate this phenomena, and he is now understood and recognized as being the father of probiotics. He is the guy that identified these bacteria that aren't pathogens, that actually are essential to good health. And one of the things he identified is that this inherent microflora in the body is primarily made up of Acidophilus and Bifidobacterium, and it's present in every human being. So that was interesting in itself, but that didn't identify what was different about the Bulgarians. And what Dr. Mechnikov found was that there is a particular probiotic bacteria, which he christened Lactobacillus bulgaricus, which has many different properties in terms of its physical size, proteins, efficacy, and so on, than the Acidophilus and Bifido that's in everyone. And this bacteria is only found in the soil and plants of very particular areas, normally in the mountains of Bulgaria around Sofia. And what was happening was that the livestock were eating the plants. That was getting into their digestive system and their milk. Then the farmers would milk the livestock, and part of what they did with that was to ferment that milk into yogurt, which of course means that those bacteria are reproducing very fast to curdle the milk into yogurt, which the Bulgarians would then eat. So the Bulgarians were the only people on earth whose daily diet consisted of large quantities of Lactobacillus bulgaricus. And Dr. Mechnikov published his findings in a number of scientific papers and a book called The Prolongation of Life, which is still in print. And he also won the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 1908 for his work. So this is not old wives' tales or voodoo medicine. This was very well established and understood by the medical community even over 100 years ago. But for various reasons, primarily because the bacteria are very delicate, and if you don't process them right, they don't survive long outside of their natural environment. And 100 years ago, there just wasn't the means to do that. And by the time there was, the political situation in those Eastern European countries made the development of commercial products just unfeasible.
For sure.
So it wasn't
because the communists really mostly building tanks.
Mostly building tanks. And actually, funnily enough, and as strange as it sounds, there is a direct correlation between all of the work that was done for military use on the Bulgaricus bacteria.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was very well funded, and money was no object, basically, and it was primarily used as emergency rations for anyone who might be in highly stressful conditions. I don't mean highly stressful by our standards. I mean by soldiers, sailors, airmen, and so on, by those standards. And they would take that in a very concentrated form as part of their daily rations and the emergency rations. So development was very well funded. But when that ended in the late 80s, early 90s, it took a long time for independent companies to develop. I mean, the whole concept of borrowing money to invest money to create a commercially viable product and then selling the product and putting money back into
a new concept there.
It's a whole new concept.
Sure, yeah.
There was no infrastructure for that. So we're in the slightly strange position in that we are both the oldest and really the newest probiotic on the market. And picking clearly it's a very complicated subject. It's easy to simplify down, and most people look at probiotics in the same way as they look at medicine. It's a very general term.
Yes,
but actually the taxonomy of the bacteria, how you pick different strains, because the names like Acidophilus and Bulgaricus and so on, they are cultures, but below those are many different strains of, for example, Acidophilus and Bulgaricus. And picking the right strains that have the right probiotic characteristics and blending them and putting them in the right carriers and so on, it's a very complicated process. And a lot of time and money went into developing Actiflora so that it would be the highest efficacy that it's possible using those bacteria. And
Actiflora is the name of the Kendi strain.
Exactly. No, Actiflora is the brand name of the product, which includes within it multiple strains of Bulgaricus and Acidophilus and Bifido and Streptococcus thermophilus blended together with what's called a supernatant, which is the carrier that the bacteria are fermented in, and then they're dry frozen and put into capsule form that Actiflora is supplied in. And the inulin is a prebiotic. And if you put the two together, a pro and a prebiotic product, they are combined called a synbiotic.
Oh, that's
so that's the term. Symbiotic means pro and prebiotic.
What's the term again?
Synbiotic.
Symbiotic.
S-Y-N. Yeah, synbiotic. And the idea of the prebiotic is that a major part of the efficacy of a probiotic is not simply the number that you put into your body, because although people look at packaging and see 20 billion, 30, 40 billion, and of course we naturally think of those as big numbers.
Yes.
But in the context of the trillions upon trillions upon trillions of bacteria that you have in your microflora, it's actually a drop in the ocean.
Yes.
And where you hope to get the benefit from is that those bacteria come out of their suspended animation and they will reproduce exponentially. So 1 becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8, and so on. So it's the reproduction that's really critical to getting the quantities that will make a difference. And the prebiotic in layman's terms, it's like putting a packed lunch in the capsule, so that when those bacteria are reactivated by the heat and the moisture of the stomach and the GI system, the bacteria will be able to feed on the prebiotic to statistically increase their chances of surviving and then reproducing and colonizing and then reaping the benefits that we expect.
Okay, I have a question for you that a friend of mine asked me. I did not have an answer for this, and I thought it was actually a very good question. The friend asked me, he said, okay, but so if I take a probiotic, okay, fine, I see the science, I need it, I take it. But if indeed it does reproduce in my body, why do I need to take it more than once? And I thought, I don't have a great science background, and I thought, seemed like a fair question, because I take probiotics every day, and I really personally need them. I do better on them. But why can't I just take them once, and then I'm good? Why?
Well, that depends on the bacteria.
Right.
As I mentioned, Acidophilus and Bifido certain strains of those are indigenous to the human body, so they will be there in some quantity throughout your life. Now, Bulgaricus is not. It's not indigenous, and it won't colonize for forever. So, for example, if you went on a course of our probiotic, you would see Bulgaricus appear in your stool, in your body, if you were testing for it. But then if you stopped taking it, the Bulgaricus and Streptococcus bacteria would have disappeared typically within 10 to 14 days.
I see. Okay.
So those particular bacteria don't colonize long term, so you want to keep replenishing them. But another point would be if we all had the ideal lifestyle with the perfect diet, and we were all 25 all the time and never suffered from any stress and never got any illnesses and so on, then I'm sure our microflora would be healthy and stay healthy.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't, of course. It dissipates. Clearly there's a lot of science behind the binding of the bacteria to the walls of the GI system, and if that binding is loosened for some reason, they will be flushed out. And in some ways it's a matter of real estate. If the walls of the GI system all over it, from the mouth down to the waste productive system, if there's areas where pathogens can settle and colonize and then they start to reproduce and multiply, then you have an infection. Mm-hmm. So denying them that space and the nutrients and creating an environment where those pathogens cannot prosper, that's part of what probiotics are doing. And Bulgaricus is particularly strong at that. It's a very big bacteria. It takes up a lot of space. It reproduces very quickly. So you get more of an effect. And if somebody's taking just an Acidophilus or Bifido, they are in effect adding a relatively small amount to what they already have a lot of. And consequently, the benefits tend to be, it varies of course, but it often is minimal. Mm-hmm. With Bulgaricus, you're adding something entirely new to the equation, which you won't have in your body. And so people that take our product tend to get a much more radical and noticeable change in a much shorter space of time.
Because they're getting an enhanced effect, is that it?
Because of the nature of the bacteria themselves and how they work, and then there are bacteriocins, immunoglobulins, proteins, and so on, which collect around, like a shell around the bacteria themselves, and you'll get a benefit from that. They will also have a very I hate to use the word holistic, it's a bit of a buzzword, but it very much is a holistic benefit in that they're not only benefiting because they are present in your body, they will also increase the binding characteristics and the functionality of the Acidophilus and Bifido, which are already there. So it's a multi-level benefit.
Sure.
And the answer to the question originally is you need to keep taking that to keep the bacteria present in the human body.
And the individual who has a history of taking a lot of antibiotics, which turns out to be a lot of us, I'm in that category, that individual really seems to benefit from taking probiotics.
Well, yes, I mean, antibiotics are often necessary,
right.
But they can do harm as well, and they tend to dissipate the good bacteria as well, and that's why people often will find that they're more prone to infections and illness after a course of antibiotics. So that's a good time, but after or during a course of antibiotics is a good time to be taking a suitable probiotic supplement, but not only then. I mean, I would encourage anyone, even if it's not our product, heaven forbid.
Right.
If somebody has a probiotic,
is there another product? No.
There are one or two. Okay. If somebody is reaping a benefit from a probiotic, they should keep taking it, because it's not something you can just take and then hope everything will stay perfect from then on in. It doesn't work like that.
And why would I use the Kendi, and how much do I use? Let's say someone stepped on a nail and they get a course of antibiotics. How much would an adult, male or female, use of the Kendi product, of the Kendi capsule?
Talking in generalizations,
yeah, general terms,
typically we would encourage people to take what we call a loading dose, because you're starting from zero. In the Bulgaricus and Streptococcus, we recommend that people take, it could be 4, even as many as 6 or 8 capsules. You can't overdose. You can't take too much. It's not possible to do yourself any harm. So a loading dose of that quantity for 2 or 3 days to build up that colony of Bulgaricus is a good idea. Typically then people would take that down to 1 a day. Now that can vary for people taking it for very specific conditions. So I would encourage anyone to play with the quantity until they get the minimum that works for them. But typically 1 a day should be more than enough, because we do have a very high count of bacteria at 45 billion.
45 billion.
45 billion. Yeah.
Right.
And now a numbers game is misleading. You can't automatically say that a probiotic with 20 billion is twice as good as one with 10 billion.
Right.
It's more complicated than that. As I said, the efficacy of the bacteria, the capacity to reproduce exponentially, and so on, these are all major factors. But assuming you have the right bacteria, then the more of them you put in your body, the better, because the more of them will survive and reproduce, and so on. You get that knock-on benefit. So the reproductive capacity of the Bulgaricus is extremely good. The inulin is a great aid to that. One of the key elements of our products compared with some other probiotics is that we don't use enteric coating. As far as we are concerned, the use of enteric coating is there to compensate for using the incorrect bacteria. Because those probiotic bacteria should be all the way through your gastrointestinal system, from the mouth all the way through to the colon, the lower intestines, and so on.
So your sense of it is that there's the enteric coating is there for what reason?
To delay the breakdown of the physical capsule that the bacteria are housed in. It will delay the breakdown of that capsule and the release of the bacteria until they get into the intestines, out of the stomach, that is. But I mean, clearly nature doesn't enteric coat anything.
Right.
And equally, I think it's fairly well understood that the history of probiotics is linked to yogurt, and clearly yogurt isn't enteric coated. And so if you have the right bacteria, then you want it to be colonizing in across as much surface area of the GI system as you possibly can, and not limit it to very small areas. And that's one of the benefits of our product, is that you will get that the colonization across a very wide range of the body. And many people will break open our capsules and sprinkle the powder into whatever you want: water, milk, yogurt, food, and then of course you're getting it from the mouth onwards.
And Kendi, how long has Kendi been available? Is Kendi available in Europe and the United States? Or?
Yes, it's available all over the world. In the United States, it's been available since around 2004. In 2003, we had to register our particular strains of bacteria with the FDA. Because the regulations are that if you have a product or ingredients which have not been available in the US prior to, I think it was 1994, you have to register them. And we had to do that because our bacteria strains are unique. So we did that in 2003, and the product was available from 2004 onwards. It's been available in Bulgaria for many, many years, and most of Eastern Europe. It's now spread out into Europe and Asia. And for any of your viewers that don't know, Bulgaria has been part of the European Union since, I think it's 2009. I may have that year on, but somewhere around 2008 or 2009. So all of the manufacturers, including supplements, drugs, OTCs, and so on, in Bulgaria have to meet exactly the same standards as the UK, Germany, Switzerland, and so on. Very high
that's good to know, because people are always wondering if it doesn't come from the United States, are the standards good? And that seems like a very fair thing to worry about.
Yeah, well, Kendi themselves had to invest an awful lot of money to come up to the European standards and meet them, which they were doing for years in advance of Bulgaria's entry into the EEC, because obviously people knew it was coming, and manufacturers of all kinds were given a number of years to come into line with the regulations so the transitions would be smooth. And that's what Kendi were doing for a large part of the early 2000s, of investing to meet, as I say, the same standards as Switzerland and Germany and so on, which are recognized, I think it's fair to say, as, if not the highest, then certainly right in the top echelon of manufacturing.
Everyone loves German products, obviously. Great product, great scientific products. So again, what is the strains of bacteria, if I'm using that term correctly, that I get in the Kendi Acidophilus?
They're actually listed on the bottle. They have names that are linked to. They're actually protected under the laws of product copyright in Bulgaria. They're registered in the Bank of Microorganisms. You can't actually patent a bacteria. It's not, but the way that you process it, yes, and the carriers that you use and the final product can be. So those particular strains are registered in the Bank of Microorganisms, and they are unique, and the processes that we use in them are completely different to any other probiotic on the market. You touched on this issue at the beginning. If most consumers go into a pharmacy or a health food store and look at probiotics, it looks like there's a very broad range of options. Yes. Many different labels and formats and prices and numbers and so on. But actually, if you dig a little deeper and you look at them, you'll find that they're all either totally made of Acidophilus and Bifido, or primarily, and even the blended ones, if they actually break down the numbers of the different cultures, you'll see that the vast majority are Acidophilus and Bifido, because they are the easiest to get, they're the most plentiful, they're the most economic to put into a product. But our position would be that whilst we're not saying that's without benefit, we're saying that's not likely to have as much of a benefit as taking something which is proven to be have greater efficacy as a probiotic in many different characteristics. And when you're adding something new to the body that you haven't had before, naturally you would expect it to be a more radical change.
And where can I buy these Kendi probiotics?
We're mainly in health food stores, Martha's, Sprouts, Mother's Market.
Mother's is a great
yeah, absolutely.
And Sprouts, of course, they're a powerhouse.
Absolutely. Super Supplements up further up the northwest coast in Washington. They're listed on our website. You can see the retail outlets. We're on a number of online retailers as well. You can also get them direct from Kendi. So, but
why don't you tell us how we can get them? Give me some contact info.
If you go to www.kendiusa.com, you will be able to order from that website if you wish, or you can look at the list of retailers. There's a little drop-down menu where you can see all of our retail outlets separated out into states. So www.kendiusa.com.
Well, Mark from Kendi, I'd like to thank you for being a guest today on Here's to Your Health. It's been it's an important subject, and I think I've actually used Kendi, and I think it's a great product. And I appreciate you being my guest today on Here's to Your Health.
It's entirely my pleasure.
Thank you. You've been listening to Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after these important messages.
Hi, this is Dawn Christie inviting you to join me every Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, for my all-new show, The Dawn Christie Show. Join me as I discuss love, spiritual readings, your purpose, why am I born, what am I here to do. So don't forget to tune in The Dawn Christie Show at 1 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV, reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hello, I'm Joel Ramirez.
And I'm Lolita Robinson Coppage, and welcome to Joy in My House
on LATalkLive.com. Inspirational radio
with a touch of recovery.
A reality show where nothing is left unsaid.
And no one is insignificant who says it.
Exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV.
Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Joshua Lane, member of the board of directors of Dr. Ann Wigmore's Hippocrates Health Institute, Josh Lane was part of the Dr. Ann Wigmore team that brought wheatgrass, sprouts, and raw foods to a worldwide audience. And now the host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, Joshua Lane.
We're back. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. My next guest is the environmentalist and the author, Stacey Patterson, who has a very lovely, two lovely children's books on peregrine falcons. Stacey, welcome to Here's to Your Health.
Thank you for having me.
Just come close to the microphone. Otherwise, it's a mime show, and
Okay.
my guests don't usually like that. So what prompted you to write your books for children?
Well, I've worked with peregrine falcons for about 25 years, and I'm enamored by them as so many people are, and they were in danger because of the use of DDT in the 40s to 1960s, and they were saved.
What's DDT?
DDT is an insecticide that was used to kill insects, and small birds ate the insects, and subsequently the peregrines would eat the small birds as part of their diet, and the insecticide would get caught up in their systems and soften the calcium of the eggshells. And so the eggs were crushed and the young weren't able to be born. And this had a decimating effect on the population.
And so DDT is now banned, is that correct?
Yes, DDT was banned, and along with that, people got together, falconers and scientists got together to start a captive breeding program for peregrines. And they raised the young initially in incubators so that the eggshells would not be crushed. And then they would put them in hack boxes. Hack boxes are boxes that they would put...
What kind of boxes?
They're called hack, H-A-C-K.
Hack boxes?
Yes, it's an old falconry term. The birds would be put in the hack boxes and be fed food by humans until they would learn how to first of all, they needed to learn how to fly, and then they needed to learn how to hunt so they could survive on their own. Subsequently, then produce on their own and bring the population back.
Excuse me, so you mean to tell me that you can actually put them in these little hack boxes and feed them, and they know, without your teaching them, how to fly?
Well, they have to learn on their own, and it's not anywhere near as good as having an adult parent teach them, but it's the best you can do under simulated circumstances. The birds would not be able to see the people. They would drop food in the back because you don't want them to associate people with food. So as they go off and trial learning how to fly and learn how to hunt, they would have a backup food supply at the hack box until they were able to function on their own. Most birds of prey don't make it through their first year. 80% die in their first year.
Really?
So it's a hard life under the best of circumstances. And the good thing about this whole movement was that when the people started this, they had no idea if it would succeed. They were pioneers, literally what the word means. But they did succeed. And the peregrine was removed from the federal endangered species list in 1999. Most animals, plants that go on the endangered species list don't get off. And I was struck by the movement, struck by the story, struck by my love of peregrines, that I could still be around peregrines, other people could be around peregrines. And I wanted to write the books basically as a tribute to the people who did this. But who wants to read stats and nesting site information and, biological stuff? I wanted to take
Other
it down,
scientists, I think, possibly.
Yeah, but I wanted to take it down to a mainstream audience so that people could learn about what happened within a short period of time and through the eyes of a fictional character, Fidget, and her brother, who go through the experiences of living in a hack box. And the first book, Fidget's Freedom, she learns how to fly. And then the second book, Fidget's Folly, she and her brother Echo do learn how to hunt.
And what's your science background?
I have a bachelor's in from University of California, Santa Cruz.
In biology?
Mm-hmm.
Biology. Right. So as a young woman, you gravitated toward the outdoors, and is that it? You just
No.
No?
I played with dolls.
Played with dolls. No.
I was a typical young girl. I wanted to work with wildlife and this kind of. I didn't really know what that meant. I just had this longing, and I went up to the Wildlife Way Station in Little Tujunga Canyon, and went up there one day, and they were having a volunteer orientation. And I'm in the medical field by profession, and I'm an X-ray technologist. And I was able to work in the hospital up there, take X-rays on the wild animals during procedures, and got to know the staff there, and got interested in the birds of prey and learned how to train them and fly them, and got my initial training there, and then got my falconry licenses. And I also work with a local wildlife rehabilitation education program in the South Bay area here.
So falconry, for my listeners, falconry means what exactly?
Falconry is hunting with birds of prey. And typically, people work with hawks and falcons, sometimes owls, and they go out and train the birds to hunt whatever species they naturally hunt, but then to transfer the food to the falconer. Falconry started out as a way for people to feed themselves, but now people don't really need to do that. Sometimes they do eat what the birds catch. Sometimes if they catch grouse or quail, things like this. But for the most part, it's the bird is taught to associate the falconer with the food, even though they're catching the food. They transfer to the falconer, the falconer will feed them off their fist. So the falconer is the source of food. And it's an old sport. It's been around for about 2,000 years.
It really does sound like an ancient sport, falconry, right?
It is. When I first learned about it, I knew someone wore the hood. I didn't know if it was the bird or the person. It was at its height in medieval times. Only royal families could hunt with the peregrine, but everyone had birds and hawks at that time. Nuns took their birds to church. Birds were birds were traded in treaties. They witnessed battles. In fact, at that time, the peregrine was one of the most revered animals in history, and honestly, throughout time, the only other animals as revered as a peregrine has been the dog and the horse. Because of this, eons, generations of contact with these birds, working with them day in, day out, the information going from generation to generation, village to village, country to country, continent to continent. This technology, or not technology, but this
technology
information.
Seems very fair. It actually is technology, isn't it? You're using these birds as, we're using them as tools.
Yes, but taking that old knowledge of how to work with these birds, how to train them, how to release them, combined with modern technology, with transmitters, with GPS, with all these new technologies combined, we're able to make the people succeed in bringing a species back. And they're using these same technologies with other species now. So the peregrine isn't as much of a concern anymore. So they're going on to other endangered species with a lot of the same techniques.
And so let's go back to falconry. So if we went back to, say, medieval France in 14th, 15th century, so you're saying that the whole idea that most of the villagers and the people the royalty, they would have falcons as a tool to hunt, etc. And so you train them to kill a grouse and to bring it back to you, not to eat it themselves. Is that it?
Well, yeah, but they'll kill the grouse and they'll stay on the grouse. You have to go to the bird.
Oh, I see.
You have to, and then the bird is trained to step off the grouse onto your fist, and then you will either feed it another food if you want the entire grouse or maybe part of the grouse. And it might seem kind of weird to people that falcons were used in this way, but you have to remember this is before guns.
Right.
So if you want a bird that flies, how else are you going to catch it? You can't you can trap it, I suppose, but it's a way. Whoever the light that went off in his mind, they said, "Oh my gosh, I can't fly after that duck, but if I could train that bird to get the duck and not keep it for himself, but to give it to me." Mm-hmm. And then came up with these ideas, and I'm sure trial by error. No one really knows all the beginnings, but it worked and it caught on. And today, even in California, there's a lot of falconers. Most of them live in the interior areas where there's lots of room, and not the urban areas so much. But there's every state except for Hawaii has falconry clubs, and there's a national falconry organization.
And so again, still today, people might go into the interior part of California, and they can actually release their falcon, and the peregrine falcon will bring them back. What, a rabbit?
Peregrines hunt birds.
Oh, they hunt other birds.
Right. So you may send them after grouse, quail, pigeons, things like that. Now, hawks, such as a red-tailed hawk, they're the ones everyone sees doing the lazy circles up in the air. They're more the ones that would go after rabbits, squirrels, chipmunk. I mean, something along those lines.
And again, so you just decided as a young woman you were involved with, you were a naturalist. You kind of in college you kind of felt that was your calling.
Yes, I did. There's something about birds of prey that when they get in your blood, they just stick there. I did a talk just 2 days ago with my peregrine, and there was a little boy who was about 11, and I asked a question. He knew the answers to all of them, and he even had made a little hood, and he showed me his hood, and I was like, "You're caught. You know, it's there. You know, it's once it's there, it tends to stay. A lot of times, people will pursue it when they're young, but then when they have jobs, they have families, and they may let it go for a while. Then around retirement age, people pick it up again. And when I first started, there were very few women, and now there's probably, like in anything, about 50% of the falconers, somewhere around there, may be women now.
So of course you got to take care of the birds every day. Every day you got to feed them and water them and keep them out of the sun and keep an eye on them, right?
Yes, it's somewhere probably between a dog and a baby, you know, as far as the care.
No, it's a lot of work. A lot of work, yeah.
It is. Once you have to have special housing for them, you have to have permits for them. The only way to have birds of prey legally is to have a falconry license at both state and federal level, or rehabilitators have permits, and they'll have education permits for birds that are unreleasable to take them out to the public. And what's nice is when we do take them out to the public, people can see them close up versus just something in the sky, and they see the intricate details in the feathers, they see the eyes. And one thing that's really struck me is, for years, little kids would say, "Is that alive?" And we'd say, "Well, yeah, it's alive." You know, they're still, but you can see their eyes blinking. And now kids, they're asking more, "Is it alive?" And they're really not quite sure. And it's with all the Disney animation and all these Pixar, that all these entertainment shows, the animals look so real. I think that a lot of people are having a hard time telling the difference between what is real and what's not. And when I wrote these 2 books, when she learns how to hunt, she does hunt and kill a little bird. And I've had people ask me, "Doesn't that scare kids?" And my response is, it's been very important for all of us involved with this Fidget project that Fidget was always a peregrine. She was always going to act and look, and all her behaviors were going to be a peregrine. I wasn't going to ever compromise that, and that's what they do. But
you weren't going to make Fidget into a vegan.
Exactly. Right. She wasn't going to eat carrots. It doesn't take probiotics.
That's right.
But it was important to us that she be what a wild animal is, so that people still have a little bit of a touch of that side of us. That the yearning is there. You see it in little kids to learn, but and more. We're divorced from it.
And I know parrots are very smart, and parrots talk. You know, do the falcons? How smart are they? And do they talk? And what do they get to know? Do they really know you?
Yes, they do. They talk their own language, like a dog barks. They have their own vocalization. They don't talk the way parrots do.
But they don't imitate. They don't imitate.
No, they don't know their names. They recognize voices, certainly footsteps. My birds, if they're nervous, they always look at me as a security. They always look at me that they know on whatever level they know that I'm going to protect them. But parrots are social by nature. They flock together. That's one of the reasons they do so well with humans. But birds of prey are asocial. Basically, you don't see them hanging out together except during breeding season. They're always alone. So they don't have a need to be with you. It's a tolerance to a point of liking. But the hardest part about falconry is when you let this bird go, you really don't know if you're going to get that bird back. It's exhilarating to know that bird in the air. Your stomach does all the turns with the bird, but they can take off. And I had one after 3 years, she took off. I don't know why, and I tried for 3 days to get her back, and I never did. She broke my heart. I don't think I broke her heart, but it's just one of those things that with them, they have their own mindset, and they are perfect predators, perfect hunters, and that is what their mind is made for, not to be cuddly and hands-on the way the parrot is.
So they're a little bit like cats. You know, the cats decide they're leaving, they're just gone. That's it. Is that it?
Probably more so. More so.
And by the way, where can I buy these lovely books? And these are for children. Adults could read them, but they're for children, right? Adults to read to kids.
They're for children. The age group is 4 to 8. Grandmothers and teachers are ones that I've had very fond of the books, because not only are the books telling a story about these two birds, but the illustrator, who is a Russian man named Vadim Gorbatov.
Is he in this country?
He's in Moscow. He did all this from Moscow. Everything in these books the birds are anatomically correct. The landscape all takes place in Colorado. The plants, the animals are appropriate for the time of year and at the elevations. So they're a natural history story as well. And when we were creating these books, and I worked with an organization called the Raptor Education Foundation. They're based in Colorado.
The Raptor Education.
Yeah, Raptor Education Foundation.
A raptor is a what?
Raptor, birds of prey.
Birds of prey, okay.
They're the owls, eagles, hawks, vultures, and falcons.
Okay.
And raptor means to catch with your feet. I mean, literally.
Oh, is that what it means? I did not know. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And because they all have the talons. But when we were working with Vadim, I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, I forgot your question.
No, I was just talking about working with these in schools for children. That's all. You mentioned the Soviet illustrator. That's all.
Yes, and he is just this fabulous illustrator. He was able to take these stories and translate them and take my words and create these characters to life. And what I was going to say is, it is space for 4 to 8, but I have had many adults who really like it too, because it's a way to learn something in a relatively short period of time. You learn a lot about a particular environmental movement in a short period of time. It's kind of got a pretty big bang for its buck.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. Stacey Patterson, thank you very much for being guest today on Here's to Your Health.
Thank you very much.
And your book's available again with Amazon and local bookstores?
Amazon and Raptor Education Foundation. I've got a website, www.fidgetbooks.com. And Mountain Press in Missoula, Montana is the publisher.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after these important messages.
Hi, this is Jean Noel Bassior, inviting you to join me for my new show, The Book Beat, Monday evenings at 6:30 p.m. I'll be talking to authors about their latest book so you can find a fantastic read. But more than that, I'll be talking to experts about how you can write your own book and get it published. So tune in on Mondays at 6:30 p.m. exclusively on latalklive.com. And remember, you can catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Y'all ready for this? Yeah!
Hi, I'm Jerry Bell of the Daz Band in New Birth.
And I'm Brahima Arsalan.
Inviting you to join us every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Time for Jerry Bell's R&B Soul Classics, baby.
Join us as we play some of the greatest hits of soul and R&B and listen in to interesting discussions with the legends of the music.
So don't you forget, join us on the Jerry Bell's R&B Soul Classics. You'll love it. Exclusively on latalklive.com.
You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio.
Or watch us and listen directly at latalklive.com, baby.
Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure.
This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk, baby. We are music.
Joshua Lane, member of the board of directors of Dr. Ann Wigmore's Hippocrates Health Institute, Josh Lane was part of the Dr. Ann Wigmore team that brought wheatgrass, sprouts, and raw foods to a worldwide audience. And now the host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, Joshua Lane.
We're back. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. My next guest is Aileen Nobles, who has a healing center in Malibu, California, and is going to chat with us today about healing issues in general, but something called, is it EFT?
It is, and EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques.
Good. Aileen, thank you for coming to the show today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Emotional Freedom Techniques.
Correct.
And I don't understand this subject. Tell me what that entails.
I like to think of it as emotional acupuncture.
Uh-huh.
So it's based on the premise of various things going on in the body. As you know, with acupuncture, physically, if you get blocks in the meridians, you get physical issues. That's the idea. With EFT, we have blocks in our subconscious. We have stuff that's happened to us over the years.
Yeah.
And that stuff really does affect us in present time. So with EFT, it's a tapping technique on meridians. And what it does is unblock when you verbalize a core issue, something that may have been traumatic or maybe stuck or maybe an emotion we're just feeling every day. And when you unblock an emotion that way, the body has a chance to heal itself physically, mentally, and emotionally. And don't we all need that?
No, that sounds, this actually sounds important. And of course, the whole idea that the emotion is a factor in health, physical health, I think is a statement that most people would agree with today. They might not agree with it 50 years ago.
Absolutely.
But I think today, or maybe even less than 50 years ago, but today people think, oh, yes, we understand there is a connection. There's a connection.
Right. And that's very obvious because, for a quick example here, I was diagnosed with cataracts and glaucoma about 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. And my husband had a massive stroke 9.5 years ago. And, I thought, I can't go through this. There must be a reason. And of course, there is a reason. And the reason was I was going to the nursing home and seeing him as he was every day, and I didn't want to see it. So I started tapping on not wanting to see. And as I tapped on what I didn't want to see and turned it around, because you go from the negative and you go into a positive, and you turn it into, well, I need my eyes to see, I really do want to see, and I want to be of help. And it went away. When I went for my next checkup, the doctor said, I don't understand it, but there's no cataracts or glaucoma.
And excuse me, Ms. Nobles, so over how long a time frame was this from the problem with cataract, and then you went back to the physician, and he or she said to you, oh, no cataracts?
6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't even rushed back, and I hadn't done that much tapping, but it's just an example of how what's going on mentally with us becomes obvious physically. To me, the emotional body, when it doesn't get listened to, and a lot of people don't listen to what's going on emotionally, especially the British, you keep a stiff upper lip and you don't really have to go there into why and what. So we stuff stuff inside. And when the emotional body is not being listened to, the physical body acts as a voice. And we get the aches and we get pains. And if we're not moving forward in life as much as we'd like, often we get a knee problem or a foot problem.
But the whole idea of a stiff upper lip, doesn't that really apply more to our parents' generation than to our generation? No, I'm asking.
I'm pretty old. I think it applies to my generation.
Really?
I was raised that way too, but I left to come here when I was 21, so I didn't follow that.
Right, you felt, no, that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So I work with people with using EFT from anything from PTSD for all sorts of traumas, And that can include car accidents, to being yelled at in school, to divorces. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is when it leaves a scar on you. Mm-hmm. That will begin to affect the way you feel, the way you act, the way you live. And so when we get into the subconscious and begin to release, it's literally releasing energetically, because really this is energy medicine. Okay. And that is getting more known just as EFT is, which is now getting into some of the jails and being used in some hospitals. So it's like energy medicine is the next wave of healing for people. And what makes me so excited about it is that it's a self-healing technique. So people can learn to use it on themselves, just like I do.
And it's completely safe, and it's can't hurt me, and it's inexpensive. So those are all kind of very good things, right?
Yes, they are, except to the drug companies.
Right. Well, we won't make fun of them today. We do every day make fun of them here on my show because they deserve it many times. But so explain to me and to my viewers, what is the technique for the EFT?
It is a gentle tapping on meridians, and for example, one of the main ones is on the side of the hand.
So I'm hitting right here on the side of the hand.
Yes.
Okay.
And as
above the wrist.
Above the wrist, below the little finger.
Yeah.
And as you tap on that, say if I let me think of a quick thing.
Should I use all my fingers or just two fingers?
Yes, just all the fingers. Uh-huh. If someone's feeling a little depressed right now or stressed, let's go with stress.
Okay.
And they would say out loud, or, when no one's around, even though I'm feeling really stressed right now, I completely accept myself anyway. You'd repeat that a few times.
What would I repeat?
Even though I'm feeling stressed, I completely accept myself anyway. That's an important part of it. Then we might go to the crown chakra, just tapping on top of the head. Then
what's a chakra?
Eastern philosophies, I don't think we want to get into that, but it's an energy system throughout the body, invisible to the naked eye, but can be measured with various instruments. Vortexes of energy. So let's just say the top of the head where the hair goes a little crazy for children.
Right over here. We're tapping the crown chakra?
Yes. So you just tap that area.
Tap it with the same couple of fingers?
Same couple of fingers.
Yeah. Does it matter if I use left or right hand?
No.
Okay.
And you say, even though I'm still stressed, I still really appreciate myself anyway.
Okay.
Then you go to the eyebrow. Even though I'm still stressed, I'd rather not be. And various other ones are on the chin, collarbone. But even people just tap on this one and take it from I'm feeling so stressed, I don't know how I'm going to cope, to I'd much rather feel calm and more relaxed. You see, it's not what we're dealing with, it's how we're dealing with it every day. I mean, I still have to go to the nursing home every day. I earn a living. I'm a grandma. I'm my sole support. I'm my husband's support. That can be stressful.
It can be stressful, yeah.
So if I get into stress or overwhelm, and it does happen now and then, I will immediately tap, even though I'm feeling overwhelmed, even though I'm feeling stressed. I'd much rather not be. It's useless. It's not getting me anywhere. I need my full strength, my energy, my enthusiasm. And you literally feel the change coming over you. So it's not something that, it may sound woo-woo to some people, but it really isn't. It's a very scientific basis, and acupuncture's been around for thousands of years. And as I said, it's emotional acupuncture rather than physical acupuncture. But when you work on the emotions, you can heal so many physical issues.
I watched some of your videos in preparation for your interview today, and on one of them you said, okay, so if something's going bad, you can get all stressed and tighten about it, but it doesn't make it go any better. And the way you said it was actually a little more succinct than that. And I thought, well, that's just very good advice. People might know that. They need to hear that again. They need to hear that advice on a regular basis, because I think many of us probably forget that.
I think we daily forget that. And we get hung up in what's going on in my story and how can I cope and I. And then just a minute, take a deep breath. Take 2, take 3. Okay, it isn't going away probably. But how can we look at it differently? And are we going to cope? Yes, we usually do. So why get in such a dither about it? And it's easy to do that when it just gets heaped upon you.
Sure.
But when you've got a clearer mind, when you're feeling a little more centered, and you don't have time to meditate, just a quick tapping of on the side of the hand will bring you back down into, I'd much rather be grounded right now. I'd much rather feel strong. I'd much rather feel peaceful and have the energy to cope.
And so what is this technique called? Give me the name of this technique once again.
Emotional Freedom Techniques, EFT.
EFT. I'm sorry.
Yes.
EFT.
EFT.
Emotional Freedom Technique.
Correct.
And who was the original teacher of this?
Gary Craig.
Gary Craig.
And he made it simple for people. Before then, it was a lot more complicated, and a different person, Callahan, had created it, psychologist. So Gary Craig created it, and...
You studied with Gary Craig?
Yes.
Yeah, is it right here in the States?
Yes, he's up north. And he's...
And what prompted you to study that?
Well, you know, I've been a hypnotherapist for 30-odd years.
Oh, I see.
Always looking for something quicker, something easier for people to help change their lives around and feel good. Then I studied NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And then I came across EFT, and that was the quickest. The lights went on. It was like amazing what I saw people going through. So I primarily used EFT, although I also do Theta, which we certainly won't get into now. But I'm also intuitive, so I'm able to connect with people's subconscious. So a lot of times people don't know what's going on subconsciously. Well, we don't. 95% of us is subconscious and 5% is conscious.
That could be true. Could be true. I'm prepared to believe that.
Yes, it's pretty scary when you think about it.
People have an interior life, don't they? People have an interior life.
Yes. I mean, we don't have to think about how to breathe, how to walk, how to eat, how to do any of those things. It's going on. And so is our reactive energy from things that have happened in the past. And, you know, it's just like if you think about a certain music, a certain record, and that singer, it will flash you right back where you were when you first heard that, if it was wonderful, if it was romantic. And a perfume can do the same thing. Someone's face, if they remind you of your father who used to beat you when he came home every day. You don't know why you're triggered by somebody you just meet. Right. And it's a flashback, a subconscious connection with, oh my God, he reminds me of my father. And so the subconscious, whatever's going on that creates hiccups in our lives, I like to call it that way, which makes life a little more challenging, all those issues can be resolved, diffused. It's like you take the pain out of them. Someone's been raped, and that's a lot of what I get with people that come. You can diffuse that whole trauma so that they can even talk about it. Yes, like it happened to somebody else. Yes, that happened.
Oh,
but
really?
there's
God.
And people coming back from the war, PTSD, the nightmares that are going on. And they may have gone through therapy for years. And with EFT, and there's a few great practitioners that do this, specialize in it, they lose their nightmares. They can talk about recounting the story. Yes, my friend was blown away in my arms, and he died right there, and he'd lost his, all the horrific horrors that they've been living with that create these terrible, terrible nightmares and sweats and fear and panics. All that gets diffused so quickly, like in 2 or 3 months instead of years. They're usually over that.
That sounds very important, because obviously, trauma, emotional trauma, physical trauma, but emotional trauma is like, it's very, very costly to the body and costly to society, and it's just very costly. And I think many of us, maybe most of us now, recognize that this emotional trauma is very costly to society.
Extremely so, and there has been no way that's quick enough. It's like they say, so many times you hear, even with asthma, and that's one that usually you can get rid of in like 2 sessions.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
The doctors will say, no, there's no cure for asthma. So people go around with their story. Oh, I've got asthma, I'm going to have it forever. Oh, poor me.
Right.
And that compounds the issue. Where if you realize that there's probably a lot of fear in there, go back to the trauma when the asthma started, go back to an allergy to a cat sitting on a baby's face when it was young, all these things. Yeah.
Right.
can create.
Yeah, that could be bad for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be bad. Yeah, it's
that tends to give you panic in the chest
could be
and
bad, really.
can't breathe. And you see, wherever anything happened, there's usually some trauma that went along with it.
I'm not laughing. I hope you don't mind.
No, I get it. I get it.
That's fine.
You got the image very clearly of that. And yes, it's.
Because unfortunately, cats and dogs in the house can trigger lots of health problems. Unfortunately, people hate me when I say that. They think, "Oh, you don't like cats and dogs." No, I like cats and dogs, but there's a price to pay when you have cats and dogs in the house. There's saliva, there's fecal material, there's dander. I mean, it's a problem, unfortunately.
It can be. On the other hand, think of all the millions of people that have cats and dogs and have no problem whatsoever.
Well, I'm not sure they have no problem, but
they don't know about.
But they like dogs and cats, and dogs and cats are fun for sure. They certainly are fun, but there's a price to be paid. Unfortunately, sometimes.
Sometimes there is. But again, it's like there's help. You can find out your root cause of an issue and begin to heal yourself of that particular emotion, whether it's fear, anxiety, whatever it is. And that, to empower people to work on themselves, to be able to do a lot of this healing, that's exciting.
Sure. That's very exciting. And where you work in Malibu?
Yes.
Where's your facility? Want to mention it?
At the Malibu Healing Center on Pacific Coast Highway. And there's a lot of great healers there doing all sorts of different modalities. And the self-help through the YouTubes that you looked at some of those, yes. People can tap along with those.
Yeah, I noticed you did one interview with a young woman who had a problem with public speaking.
Yes.
And you mentioned that, no, indeed, you can use this. What's the name of this technique again?
EFT.
EFT. And that you felt, and this woman felt that, indeed, the EFT had helped her have less problems with public speaking. And I thought that was, that was nice because it was, there's something that affects a lot of people. Public speaking, people
huge.
Really just don't want to do it.
Well, obviously, you don't have that issue.
Mm-hmm. No. Luckily, that's not been my problem. No. I'm good at this. This is one thing I'm good at.
But a lot of people would love to be doing what you do or be that comfortable in front of an audience, just like you, but they're not. So you go back, okay, what happened? When did this first start? And you'll find it was in high school usually or junior high, and they said something wrong and kids laughed at them or they were told they weren't reading it properly. Whatever it is, go back. We undo that issue, and they usually begin to get self-confidence, and they're fine after that. You have to find the root cause of when it happened.
Well, it could also be that everyone has their own skills. Some people can, shoot a basket. Some people can put together a car engine in the dark when they're blindfolded or something. I mean, people have skills, and I think the ability to communicate is just a skill, isn't it?
I think it's a skill, but it goes, you can have a skill without letting your personality come out. So, you've got to be able to be comfortable in your own skin talking to people about what it is you're talking about. And that means letting go of the self-consciousness so that you can let it flow through. Mm-hmm. So, yes, you can learn how to speak. But whether you're going to be a good speaker is another story.
Oh, yes, that's fair. Right. That's right.
But just to get over the fear of getting in front of an audience. And it's amazing, even with actors, that all of a sudden they start getting very self-conscious and freezing almost, especially if they're not big enough where they don't need an audition, if they still have to go for auditions and they feel they shouldn't be. It's interesting how some of them actually go into a little frozen area there. And so you have to sort of undo that and get them back into the flow of where they were. But so many rejections can do a lot of damage.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
So you have to get
it takes so much
beyond
abuse,
that too, right?
And then you're getting kind of had it for a while. You need to just kind of relax.
And then there's other things like the yips. The yips for golfers, the yips for dentists, the yips for surgeons.
What's yips? I don't know
the
what that
yips are when all of a sudden your steady hand gets unsteady.
Oh, God. I mean, that could be bad if you're a golfer or a surgeon.
Or a dentist. But it happens. I mean, it's even been studied at the Mayo Clinic. It's that prevalent. You can get rid of the yips because that is a mind thing that's going on. And the more you think about getting rid of it, the more it's there. And the more you're afraid it's going to be there. And so it just gets worse and worse and worse. But again, usually 1 or 2 sessions of EFT or doing it on yourself, you get rid of the yips of something that, as you say, is life-threatening. You can't have a surgeon with the yips.
No, that would not be good at all. What prompted you to examine these type of healing modalities?
Well, as I mentioned, I'd been a hypnotherapist for over 30 years before I did this.
Yeah,
so.
but even so, you were already a young woman when you started that, right?
Yes,
Right.
I was.
So what prompted you even just to start that as a young woman?
The desire to find ways that people could help themselves. I mean, it started very young. I just knew I was walking to a beat of a different drummer.
So wellness has always been
Always.
your subject that you thought this has merit.
Absolutely, because I don't believe in sickness. Now it's there, it's all around us, but it's like, okay, if we've created the sickness most of the time, and there's usually an emotional component connected with illness, let's get rid of the emotional component so that the body can begin to heal itself. I don't primarily work with physical issues. I primarily work with emotional issues. But it's just like any issue. If someone's got to take an exam and they're nervous about it, if somebody's angry at their spouse and so angry that they're destroying themselves in the process because they aren't releasing the anger or dealing with it, everyday life is an emotional challenge.
Sure.
And so what better way than to have techniques where people just don't have to suffer as much. I think it was suffering more than anything. I wanted to alleviate suffering in any way I could. Not me alleviate, help people help themselves alleviate.
Sure.
And so it just snowballed out of that. And it has to be one of the most rewarding things you can do. I mean, I can't tell you the wonderful stories, and it's just really heartwarming to see people come in really broken, feeling that they're broken. They're never broken. It's my spiritual understanding. They're never broken, but there's issues that need healing, and then they sort of transform into people who are so much more confident.
And what was the name of the author that you studied with? Who was it? Craig?
Gary Craig.
Gary Craig. Is there a book out that Gary Craig has that you want to mention?
He actually had, let's see, I don't even know that Gary has books out. Lots of people done EFT have books out. I've got a book out.
Oh, what's the title of your book?
The Magic is in Your Hands. And EFT, The Magic is in Your Hands. But there are so many good books out there. Just go to Amazon, put in EFT, and all these wonderful books will pop up. And you just choose one that you relate to, that you like the sound of. But there's no lack of books. Believe me, there's probably thousands by now on EFT.
And on the EFT, I can sit at my desk. I can be at home. I can just do it. I can be, watching birds or, watching the television news, and I can just do the tapping.
Not quite,
Nope.
Because you have to focus on what it is you're wanting to release.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And it's the core issue. You can tap all you want all day and night. That won't do a thing. You can talk about your core issue all day and night. That won't do a thing. Put the two together and something magic seems to happen.
So in other words, I'm trying to resolve the issue. So
Yes.
for example, okay, let's say I have an injury. I injured my arm or hand. What would I do and where would I tap? Am I putting on the spot too much on that?
No, not at all. And in fact, in my book, I've got everything written out for you as to what to say. So people say, I don't know what to say. Well, it's all written out for you. But for example, I have needed a knee replacement and foot surgery since my husband's stroke. They were both scheduled. So when the pain comes back, because I still can't do either of those things, because I have to take care of things.
Right.
So when I get a little pain, immediately I know that I've got an emotional stress going on. And I will check in my subconscious and find out what is my stress right now. Well, my stress is fear, or my stress is anxiety, or my stress is sadness, or my stress. And I will tap on, even though I've got this in my knee, I'm quite wonderful anyway, and I'd much rather not have it. And as I'm tapping and saying, even though I've got this pain in my knee, I'd much rather my knee felt strong because I need my knee to walk forward on. Right. So you take it into the positive. Now, yes, I still need a new knee, but that doesn't mean I have to have the pain that goes along with most people who believe that when they need a new knee, they're going to be in pain.
Right.
So much of it is mental.
Gotcha.
And when you expect a pain, you're going to get it. When you go into fear with a pain, it's going to compound. When you're told these wonderful labels of disease, then that makes it even worse. But when you think differently, when you think, oh, well, then there's an emotional issue here, connected with my disease, connected with my knee, that I can begin to dissipate, to make it less, then my pain can go away. Even if I've still got the same issue, my pain goes away.
Right.
And I've done this for 10 years.
Well, Aileen Nobles, I'd like to thank you for being a guest today on Here's to Your Health. And again, we can contact you at the what Healing Arts Center in Malibu?
Malibu Healing Arts Center, or www.aileennobles.com.
Great.
And they can just put in Aileen EFT or EFT Aileen, AILEEN, and get all those free YouTubes.
Great. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Aileen Nobles.
Thank you.
Thank you. You've been listening to Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after these important messages.
Hi, this is Dr. Levi, your fitness doctor, making a personal house call, inviting you to join me Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific for my all-new show, The Dr. Levi Show. Join us as we discuss fitness, health, and well-being, including emotional and spiritual health. So don't forget to tune in to The Dr. Levi Show every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, exclusively on latalklive.com and the Talk Live Broadcast Network. You can also catch us on iTunes, Radio R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv, or catch us on the Live 365 network, and now on Radio Flag and Stitcher Radio. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Elena, inviting you to join me every Wednesday at noon for Elena's Beauty Talk and more, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Joshua Lane, member of the board of directors of Dr. Ann Wigmore's Hippocrates Health Institute, Josh Lane was part of the Dr. Ann Wigmore team that brought wheatgrass, sprouts, and raw foods to a worldwide audience. And now the host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, Joshua Lane.
We're back. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. My guest is Danielle from Yoga Veda Beverage. I'm sorry, I screwed that one up there. Yoga Veda Beverage with these very interesting bottles with very clean ingredients, and they are brand new on the market. Danielle, welcome to Here's to Your Health.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Josh.
Thank you. And so Yoga Veda Beverages, what's the concept?
Well, basically he started because Douglas, our founder, he was traveling all over. He went to India and was very inspired by Ayurveda and loved yoga. So he's like, I want to find a product that is healthful, that you can drink, and it'll rehydrate you, but it has a little bit more of a flavor. So he came up with first yoga juice and changed it into Yoga Veda to help bring the Ayurveda back into everything. He designed the whole bottle by himself with his architect background. And now we're here today, 3 years later.
And what does Ayurveda mean?
Ayurveda is like the energy for life. It's a way they do in India. It's a kind of an ancient way of remedying yourself without using like chemicals and like drugs kind of use.
So it's an Indian from India perspective on wellness, and we call it just Ayurveda.
Yes, exactly.
And who's the founder of this company again?
Douglas Cooper, and then the co-founder is his wife, Victoria Cooper.
And so they traveled, and they're into wellness.
Oh yes, they're very into yoga. They are very into Ayurveda, very into like using that type of herbs and remedies, and they believe that that's a better way to have a holistic living.
Sure. Yeah. And so we have 4 flavors we have on camera, and so this one is
Kama. We used to have 3, so these are all brand new, brand tasted. So Kama, the red one, as you said, is for vitality and vigor. And they have a guava passion fruit flavor. But what I love about all the products is where as you drink a typical juice, it gives you kind of a phlegm feeling. But Yoga Veda will not. It's purely you can drink it after workout. You can drink it at Disneyland all day. And so the yellow one over here, Prana, has a mango lychee flavor. It's for energy and mental focus. Nothing has any caffeine in it, of course, so there's no need to worry about that.
Okay, and why is this one called Prana?
Prana, well, Prana is like, it typically means, it's known as like the life force. And so we blended,
right.
yeah. So the way they blended all the Ayurvedic herbs, botanicals, and minerals is to promote like this type of life.
Botanicals meaning plant-based.
Yes, because with Ayurveda, there's 3 different doshas, but we blended it differently. We use the theme of Panchanga. So it blends.
You use what?
It's called Panchanga. It's kind of a little.
Is that a band?
Right?
No.
It'd be a great name.
Yeah, it would be.
But,
No, Panchanga, I'm sorry. What is Panchanga?
Well, it's the theme of blending all the different parts. So we're not.
It's the theme.
Yes.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it gets a little bit confusing in there, but it's the way of using all parts of the plant. So we use the bark, the flower, the seed, the fruit, and I always forget the last one, and the leaf. So we use all the different parts of the plant, and then we blend them all together to work in synergy. So each one has a different herbs. We don't use one blend and blend them in all 4.
You mean is it some people might use beets and some people might use beet leaves, right? So it's kind of, is that what you're talking about, using the whole plant?
Yeah, we use the whole thing. So it's not just like how some people say if you just take an apple, that's just the fruit and the seed type of thing. But if we blend everything all together.
Oh, I see.
To these for Panchanga.
And that is based on the idea of Ayurveda, the idea of using, if it's feasible, the whole fruit or vegetable therapeutically.
Yes. So you have the whole, so it's that whole theme. So we blended it out so people aren't coming. It's like, well, I'm this dosha, what should I use? It's made for everybody.
And on the first one, it says Kama. I'm unfamiliar with the term Kama. What does that mean?
Well, it's Sanskrit for passion.
Oh, Sanskrit for passion. Oh, yes. I see. Oh, my goodness. Okay, Sanskrit for passion. And this has guava and passion fruit, which is good for circulation and good for vitamin C and...
Exactly, yeah. And it's this one is actually blended to provide vitality and to awaken the inner sutra.
Okay.
So always good.
Okay, very good. Okay, I see these people have some background.
Yeah.
Alrighty. And prana. Okay, so we did kama. What does kama mean again?
Kama is Sanskrit for passion.
For passion, okay. And prana is?
Known for life force, and that one's going to produce energy and mental focus.
Alrighty. And the third one, I have one called soma.
Soma, yes. I love Soma because I love things pomegranate, but this one isn't too bitter, so you still get the nice pomegranate flavor, but we smoothed it out a little bit. And so this one is going to help really great because Soma was originally created as a ritual drink for the gods. So if it's good enough for the gods. So it was originally a nectar. It was a nectar drink, and it was created for the gods. So we blended it and made it for us humans.
Soma.
Even better.
Wasn't that the name of a term in an Upton Sinclair book a while ago? Really, it was kind of a. Am I wrong about that? Soma.
I'd have to check on that one for you.
Could very well be. And again, so soma comes from what? It comes from. What does it do for me again?
It's originally a ritual drink made for the gods. It's going to have peace and balance.
Okay. And again, this pomegranate in here?
Yes.
And pomegranate is considered actually an important medicinal herb, is it not?
Yes, but for our beverages, we don't say them as their replacement. Like if you're taking already supplements, it's not a supplement. It's just a nice beverage that has some like healthful benefits for it.
But which does seem very fair for sure.
Yes.
Right. That's right.
Just want to make sure people aren't like, oh, skip the vitamins.
Right.
No, still take those.
Right.
But this is a great addition.
Right. So in other words, Douglas doesn't want to go to jail. He's
No,
not, that's
yeah.
Not that's right. That seems very fair.
Yes.
Of course, he's an architect. He probably designed a way to get out, but okay,
Yeah.
no problem. And this is
Amrita.
Amrita, and Amrita means what in Sanskrit?
I'm actually not quite sure right now, but it is a divine nectar. This one is our newest one because he's like, I have 4, and so this is the brand new one. So we have the blueberry and coconut water.
Blueberry and coconut water.
Yeah,
Well,
so it has
coconut
a
water is
different-
very much happening now.
Oh
isn't it?
yeah, yeah. And then I'm even from more of an island type thing, so I love coconut water. So this is a great new thing to have out, and I love the color of it. So it has a little bit of a different flavor, where the other ones have 2 fruits, and then it has like coconut water mixed with the blueberry.
So this is
little bit
blueberry and
different.
coconut water. And what does coconut water do for me anyway?
Coconut water is just a great kind of addition to your life. Instead of drinking just plain water, it'll add some vitamins and everything.
Instead of drinking soda too.
Yes.
And it has a nice taste as well. coconut
Definitely
water.
does.
And coconut water really seems to have taken off. People really have embraced coconut water.
Yes, definitely. All the different kinds of coconut water.
And to some extent, coconut water has used these.
What do you mean, how?
I mean, am I supposed to drink them for breakfast? Do
Oh.
I drink them, when I'm at the office? I mean, how do I use these?
Any time of day. We actually added in Himalayan rock salt, but it's only 1% of the daily value.
Himalayan rock salt.
Yes, so it's going to help replenish you. So say if you're at the gym, you're working hard, you can drink Yoga Veda. It'll help replenish you a little bit more. So it gives you something for your body to look for. And it has, again, Ayurveda uses all those herbs, botanicals, and minerals to help mend everything. So you use it for school, at work in the office. You can drink it in the car. Basically, it's for any part of your life. It's a beverage for your life, essentially.
So is it, I just, at work, with dinner, with breakfast, I can just drink any one of these.
Oh, yeah. And then I even bring it to Disneyland because you can bring beverages in, and then you don't even have to.
I did
they
not
don't
know
have-
that. I thought you had to, couldn't
Right?
bring anything in. I didn't know. Okay.
So, see, it's good to know all those little
It's good
things
to know,
here.
yes. It's very good to
So
know.
I always just bring it in, and it doesn't matter if it's warm or cold. We don't have any of those has to be refrigerated. So I bring it in for me and my friends, and we just drink that. And it does keep you hydrated throughout the day instead of just spending like $5 for something that they have. So I love that.
And what about calories? Everyone's interested in calories. What's the caloric intake?
Well, actually, what I love about these is these bottles, this is 1 serving. And you don't have to worry about cutting it in half. And I've actually done research, of course, not naming any names, but they do have less calories than other beverages that are like said to be our competitor out there.
Okay.
So it is going to be really good. So they all have different ones. So some of them have 90 calories per the bottle, and some have 70.
These are either 90 or 70.
Yes,
Well, that's really
but it's
nothing.
the whole bottle.
Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness.
And if you think about the whole bottle, I can't finish it, so I always just do half anyway. So it's like a great deal.
And if I can ask a question about the shape of the bottle, which, in advertising, obviously, in marketing, there are many things that are important besides the quality of the product, and one of them is presentation. And these have such a delightful look. They really are. I had to carry on too much about that, but the look is really, really
Oh, yeah. I
Well,
know.
the vegans, oh my God, they're tough, aren't they? The vegans.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're tough. They're a tough bunch. Yeah, could you imagine going after a product because it has honey in it? Now, of course, and theoretically, honey is not an animal product; it's an insect product.
Yeah.
No, am I right? I mean, I'm not trying to be.
When I found out that honey was not vegan,
Right.
it's like, oh, and then people do make those remarks like, well, it's an insect, but
Right,
I
because
mean,
theoretically it's not an animal product, it's an insect product, but the vegans still kind of, have this kind of reasonably haughty attitude. Not to cast aspersions, but they really, it's kind of funny, the vegans, yeah.
Yeah. So for them, okay, they depending on which type of vegan you
Right.
are, you be careful with this one. But other than that, and there's not much clove honey. It's
Right.
just a different kind of sweetener. But they're the only ones that I can think of. There's no milk beverages, or else I wouldn't be able to drink it. So it's perfect.
Yeah, a lot of people, unfortunately, turn out to be sensitive to cow's milk. It seems to be reasonably common that people don't do that good on cow's milk.
No, not at all. Yeah. So this is a great little way to do it.
And is this available yet?
It is. Well, within this week, actually, it's going to be in all these stores. Let me get my little
Sure.
list
Tell
out.
me who's going to have it.
So we have Mother's.
Mother's is a great chain.
Oh,
They're
yes.
fantastic. Mother's
Love
is great.
Mother's Market. We have Jimbo's.
Jimbo's is a great chain too.
Clark's.
Oh my
We
goodness.
have Clark's Tri-County Produce. We have Seaside Market, Lassen's, and then we're also online right now.
Well, if I can mention this, because we're in California, and the chains you have are all the important local chains, the chains with a long track record,
Yes.
who are very careful what they pick up. I mean, Lassen's, Mother's, Jimbo's. I mean, those are very strong wellness stores. Those are fantastic stores.
Oh, and I'm
'Cause
very
I know all those
excited.
stores. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to get to go into the stores where I normally shop, and I'm like, there we are.
That's right.
And then we're of course, we're continually working. We have some meetings set up coming up in September to hopefully get into some more. So throughout this year, definitely we're going to be popping up in more stores. And then, just ask the local grocers if they carry it, and I'm sure soon they will be. So we keep checking back. And then if you go through our website at yogavedibeverage.com, you can go through there, and through there they will send you to the online market. And even if it says out of stock, they like to say that for us, but we are checking it constantly, and the orders will be filled that week. So it's not, even if, because I know we're starting out more in Southern California, New York area. So we've gotten a lot of people in different states just, where can I get this? And that's a place to do it if you don't have these stores near you.
And Danielle, what is the suggested retail on the Yoga Veda beverages?
It's going to be around like $2.90.
Oh, $2.90 is the list.
Yes.
Okay, $2.90. That seems very fair. Are we getting 12 ounces? $2.90. Okay, that sounds very competitive.
Yeah.
That's very good. And once again, where can I buy your products?
You can buy them at Mother's, Jimbo's, Clark's, Tri-County Produce, Seaside Market, Lassen's, and then others throughout the year. And of course, online.
And online, I do what?
And online, you'll go through yogavedibeverage.com. And then right there, you'll see at the top, go down a little bit, and you'll see a little icon that says buy. And you click that, and it'll bring you straight to the website where you can buy it.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Danielle, thank you for being a guest today on Here's Health. I appreciate it very much. Thanks for your time.
Of course. Thank you so much. And I just want everybody to know that if you're not near us, we are going to be posting contests actually right after the show where you can win 2 tickets to Bhakti Fest and everything. And
Oh, that's very
beverage.
nice. Bhakti Fest.
Yeah.
Oh, good for you.
Yes,
oh, that'd be
we're
fun.
everywhere.
That'd be fun. By the way, Bhakti Fest musicians will be on my show next week.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, going to have an hour's worth of Bhakti Fest musicians playing. They were here in studio before, a couple of months ago, and they were a big hit.
Yeah.
We bring them back.
And we're going to be at Bhakti Fest this year, so that'll be really fun to have beverage there so they
That's
can all
right, out in
taste
Joshua
it.
Tree. Is that where you're going to be this year?
Yes.
Oh,
So
that'd
we're
be fun.
sending beverage, but we're not going to have a booth this year, but the beverage will be there to do yoga with everybody.
Oh, that'll be fun. That'll be fun. Well, Danielle, thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
For more information about the guests and sponsors of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, please call us at 818-707-0005.